So, after the Game Awards last night, I just had to make a video about the new Elden Ring game. The newly announced Elden Ring Nightreign. So, I was thinking about making a Game Awards video about the awards show in general, but after Nightreign was revealed and we got so much information about it so quickly, I just had to make a video covering what we know and explaining the game to you, so you know what kind of game it is and what it includes and what it's all about. We have gotten a ton of information in the few short hours since the game was announced, so I have 3 sources that I'm drawing this information from. There is an article in PC Gamer from Wes Fenlon, who played the game, and then an article in IGN from, from Tristan Ogilvy. And there's also a post on Reddit which links to a Japanese website called Famitsu, but that article is all in Japanese, which I can't read, so I'll be drawing from the Reddit post as well, who I guess is somebody who presumably reads Japanese. So, Elden Ring Nightreign, they released a gameplay trailer for it, and I'll play some of that here. Well, I'll just play the whole trailer, probably on loop a few times, so you can see it. But it looked heavily like Elden Ring, and then it also included a lot of new stuff. We saw higher mobility movement, and, new attack types and weapons and special abilities and monsters and yada yada yada. We also saw, shockingly, elements from Dark Souls 3. The Nameless King being one, and the Firekeeper being another. And so there's some sort of crossover with old content involved in this new game as well. But let's jump into the PC Gamer article. So we have a ton of, before we go there, I guess, we have a ton of information about this game already. It came out so quickly. It feels like I basically know everything about this game at this point. And obviously that's not true. I don't know everything, and there will be surprises still in store, no doubt, but they've put out so much information so quickly that it feels like I understand the basic loop of the game and the mechanics that you are going to be engaging with, and just what it is like to play the game. And I think that was wise of them to do, because the game seems to be very different from a normal Fromsoft game, and I think they wanted to set the expectations immediately about what kind of game it is, so that people don't get the wrong idea and then get disappointed when they learn what it actually is. If it's not up to their expectations or whatever. But Elden Ring Nightreign is a cooperative, kind of roguelike action game, RPG action game, set in the kind of the world of Elden Ring, but the landscape changes every game. It's sort of procedurally generated, or at least randomized in some way. So it's non-canon, is my understanding. It's just kind of basically a combat playground. It's it's a roguelike. It's really leaning into, we're here for the
mechanical fun of playing this more than a cohesive story or anything like that.
Not that there won't be story, because all of the characters that you play will have their own storylines and stuff. But it seems primarily to be sort of a combat-focused, cooperative RPG condensed down into a little roguelike formula. What else is sort of broad level about it that I should say? It is being directed. It is being game directed, I should say, by, the overall director, by a guy named Junya Ishizaki. And Junya Ishizaki is a major character at Fromsoftware.
He's been working on FromSoft games since at least Dark Souls.
And he was the combat designer, or a combat designer, for titles from Bloodborne and Dark Souls to Elden Ring. And he is now game directing this, and not Hidetaka Miyazaki,
who has been the game director for all of their previous games, to one degree or another. And because of this, because Junya Ishizaki is the game director for
Elden Ring Nightreign, you would expect, and everything we've seen so far kind of confirms this, that this is a combat-focused experience, and probably might kind of give some experimental information that FromSoft might take into their future games.
So, yeah, it's a very different game from what FromSoft normally puts out. Which they normally put out, these very narrative-focused
games. Combat is a huge part of every FromSoft game, of course. But this seems to take it to another level and kind of strip away a lot of everything else and focus on the combat loop. So, let's jump into the PC Gamer article. Yeah, here we go. Elden Ring Nightreign, hands-on, 6 hours with FromSoft's wild new co-op roguelike action RPG remix.
And by the way,
I'm visiting family right now, and I am under a blanket in the guest bedroom, trying to create a nice recording environment, so I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but hopefully it sounds good. So I'm not going to read the whole article, word for word, but let's just kind of skim through it. I've read both of them, everything that I'm going to be looking at here, and have some kind of, major things to bring up. So, the PC Gamer article starts off talking about FromSoft producer Yasuhiro Kitao asks us to forgive him if he seems nervous. He doesn't, but I'd have already sweated through my socks if I was in his shoes. He's about to let us play Fromsoftware's next game a full week before the rest of the world learns it exists, with a surprise trailer at the Game Awards. And then the article goes on to say that the game reminds him of a mod, and talks about modding in the FromSoftware games. And he says that he didn't take to the game right away, but about 4 hours into an all-day playtest in a conference room in Tokyo, I started to feel it, that raw animal thrill of a great roguelike build, the chest-thumping glory of slicing a 6-foot katana through the guts of Market, the fell omen, broken a blade that chunked off 10% of his health bar, and then mashing my character's special ability to double all the damage I just dealt. So, drop in and you're searching for items and experience points and kind of playing through a condensed version of Elden Ring. And there is even a battle royale style safe zone that kind of condenses. And this happens 3 times throughout a play session, so the game takes place over a day-night cycle. And so you drop in during the day, and at the end of the first day, the zone constricts and forces you into a boss fight. And if you beat that boss, then you can go on to the next day, and that repeats, and you fight a new boss. And then at the end of the 3rd day, you fight the final boss of the the run, basically, because this is, very roguelike-esque. So, that's kind of the basic gameplay loop. The mobility in this is significantly increased from Elden Ring and prior Fromsoft games. The article talks about how characters, they don't take full damage, they can climb up cliffs and walls. There's an ability to fly up into the air and then kind of glide to distant areas. So just the movement in general is ratcheted up, the speed is ratcheted up. Now, whether this applies to combat specifically, I don't think combat is necessarily faster paced, but the movement certainly is. They have a quote here from Junya Ishizaki, and this is a very relevant quote because I'm sure a lot of you are maybe a little frightened by this game as the notion of a live service game. It's very much in that, I suppose you'd say the genre of content that you would expect would make it a live service game. Junya Ishizaki responds to that by saying,
"We wanted to have a game that felt like a complete package out of the box on the day of purchase, so everything is unlockable. It's not what we'd consider a live service game."
And that is, I think, phenomenal. That quiets a lot of my fears, certainly. Because, we would never want to see Fromsoftware become like a Ubisoft or something where they have microtransactions, or a Call of Duty where there's all these, season passes and battle passes and yada yada yada. A lot of that garbage from modern gaming, sort of financially, that really ruins a lot of games and drags them down, in my opinion. So, it's very good to hear that that's not going to be the case. And, of course, there will be updates to the game, balance updates and such, but beyond that, Junya says, quote, "We're still in the process of thinking about the possibilities, so perhaps if the game is successful, they might add some more content, who knows, but largely our expectation at the moment should be that this is a complete package on release, and there's not going to be significant content updates of any kind." This is a little segment or a little anecdote that I just love. It really informs you what the culture is at Fromsoftware and the type of person that Hidetaka Miyazaki is.
So this paragraph says, "Nightreign is Ishizaki's baby. Via an interpreter, he told me that he'd been brewing game ideas when President Hidetaka Miyazaki suggested he try directing. He put together the pitch and got a green light. Quote, the one bit of guidance that sticks out is that he basically said, 'Do it as you please' for this project," Ishizaki says. So, the idea that Hidetaka trusted Ishizaki enough to just say, "Hey man, this one's up to you, you've got this, I trust you. You
just make the game that you want to make, I think is phenomenal, and really a testament to how Fromsoftware is a creative-led studio. Yeah, so the game will not have any PvP elements, no invasions, no covenants, nothing like that. It is a purely cooperative or single-player experience.
There will be relics that you can earn from a game, and relics are like carryover buffs that you can equip your character with to start future runs with.
So it's kind of that meta progression element in a roguelike. So for example, in this article, he gives the example of a relic that he found that made his healing flasks also heal his allies. Quote, a huge benefit when we each only had 4 to quaff before running dry. You choose from preset heroes with unique attributes. So you have, for instance, the Duchess, who has a small amount of HP, but dodges attacks with a Bloodborne-style quick-step. There are a bunch of other heroes that are listed. There's like a knight who's kind of an all-rounder. I think he's called the Wilder. There's the Guardian, who is a heavy tank type. There's a ranged mage type. And so there should be something for everybody. And there's a couple that they haven't revealed yet.
He asks,
The writer asks Ishizaki what he'd say to players who view this game's changes. Sorry, I'm not in the most comfortable position down here. Seeing if I can quietly shift. So he says, he asks Ishizaki what he'd say to players who view the changes as FromSoft simply copying what's popular in other games. And Ishizaki replies, quote, the focus was condensing this experience down, the RPG elements, the exploration, the character building and leveling. We wanted that to feel like it was all coming together and culminating in a boss fight, but in a more concentrated form. For this new sense of accomplishment that you wouldn't quite find with Elden Ring or our previous titles, we felt like we needed some new mechanics and some new elements to add into that mix. We've never really held the stance, let's absolutely not do anything that other companies are doing or not follow any trends, so we didn't really see this as chasing a trend, but we saw these as interesting elements that could work well within our multiplayer-focused, session-based gameplay. So, there's another thing I want to talk about, which I saw in these articles, is the multiplayer focus aspect of it. I saw, so you can play with up to 3 people, yourself and 2 other players. And I believe you cannot play with 2 people, it's only 1 or 3, which is interesting. But 2 of the bosses that were described in these articles, one of which was called like the Centipede Demon, they described that it could break apart and kind of attack you with multiple minions of itself. And then another boss that was a 3-headed Cerberus wolf creature, and the 3 heads could break off into 3 different wolves. And then they also talked about another boss that was a demi-human queen and a demi-human swordsman together. And then another boss that was a draconic tree sentinel with 2 knights flanking it and stuff. So basically what I'm getting at is there were a lot of
like, very related to the fact that this is a multiplayer-focused experience. So, if you have 3 people now fighting these bosses, it becomes very easy to allow the bosses to include multiple enemies as well, to kind of balance the fight in that way. So that seemed to me like a recurring dynamic in the evidence that we saw here. Just an interesting note. So, something interesting in this article that he points out is that each character has 2 unique abilities. And he points out that the Duchess character has an ability that doubles the damage from the last attack that hit the boss. And he talks about the cooperation involved in that, where the Knight character, Wilder, uses his ultimate ability that deals a lot of damage, and then the Duchess character uses her restage ability to double that damage. And that cooperative, strategic dynamic of interlinking different characters' abilities in that way is very exciting to me. That sounds very, very cool. The article goes on to say that the controls, at least currently, are a little bit awkward, and that he hopes that they improve by the end. Yeah, there's also no weight limits. You can carry whatever you find, and weapons that you have equipped in your weapon slots, even if you're not currently using them, still give you a passive buff, even if they're not, out. So that's interesting. That'll give a lot of, reasons to think about who's carrying what items, because even if they're not directly using them, the passive buff might just still be more worthwhile on one character versus another. Yeah, he talks about just kind of his gameplay loop, and nothing much interesting here. He just talks about getting knocked down at a fort, and then you have to start with the weak enemies and work your way up. That's all well and good. Yeah, he kind of emphasizes again the cooperation. Yeah, apparently there's bosses that can kind of invade you and chase you down. The example given is Market the Fell Omen, who can kind of hunt you down in the daytime. And if you take him down, you get additional rewards. Yeah, but I think that's most of what's kind of interesting here in this article. Yeah, this one article does say that they're a little worried about the map and whether it will get a little old, because it's largely reusing the same map every time, and just because ruins and stuff might move around a little bit, the unchanging topography might get old, he says. Ishizaki says that the map will sometimes see large-scale changes to terrain in the form of procedurally appearing volcanoes, or swamps, or forests. Hey everybody, my CPU overloaded, and I lost the second half of this recording, and I didn't realize until I'd finished recording, so I'm going to cover what I roughly think was the second half of the material, but if I repeat myself at all, I apologize, as I don't remember exactly what I said before it stopped recording. So anyway, here we go. So this is a quote from Ishizaki that says, "We wanted the map itself to be a giant dungeon, so players of
progress and explore a different way every time they play. You have to choose the boss you want to face at the end of the third day. Once you've made that choice, maybe you have an idea of how you want to strategize against that boss. And this might change how you approach the map. We wanted to offer players that agency to decide, okay, I need to go after a poison weapon this time to face this boss. Maybe that will take me to an area I don't usually go, or an enemy I don't usually want to fight. Hopefully this gives a little more variation between runs as well. So, the article goes on to say that the Wizard Tower puzzles were painfully simple and had very little variance, and that he was sick of them after a couple hours. And kind of ends the article by saying that although there's a lot of thrill in the higher-paced movement and kind of the remix on the Fromsoft formula, he fears that it will kind of grow stale if there isn't enough variety in the end, which I understand, and I can kind of, I would say that's my primary concern about this as well. The idea that this might feel a little stale, because it's reusing, all these assets from Elden Ring and apparently earlier games, and, it's remixing Limgrave. They say that, that's kind of the primary area of this game, is kind of a remixed version of Limgrave. So, that, just leaves me wondering if it will get a little old. That's the only hesitancy I have about this game, I would say. Going to the IGN article, I'll just skim this one and see if there's anything of interest here. There's a quote at the beginning that says, from Miyazaki, that says,
"Initially, when we set out to make Nightreign, we wanted to create what we're calling a condensed RPG experience. We wanted to take all those elements from Elden Ring that players enjoyed, like the exploration, the building of the character, fighting tough bosses,
the sense of discovery, and condense that into a shorter, tighter play session. And the play session for this would be a little under an hour, it seems, because it takes place over 3 days, and they say that a day is about 15 minutes, followed by a boss fight, so it should be about, if you're successful in a run, you make it all the way to the end, it should be about 50 minutes, somewhere around there. But yeah, then they just kind of, in the article, talk about what it's like to start with a low-level character and run around and build yourself up. This is all kind of familiar territory for us these days. We all know the Battle Royale formula very well. They talk about the brand new boss called the Centipede Demon, a towering, twisting swarm of disgusting limbs prone to detaching body parts in an attempt to divide itself and conquer my crew. Which I think I said before, it seems like there's a lot of bosses that are multi-enemy like that, or can break into multiple enemies, which is probably a design decision driven by the fact that this is a co-op first experience. Yeah, they talk about the shrinking circle, so very Battle Royale. In this case, it also seems to kind of funnel you to the boss fight of the day. That's that shrinking circle, and, in a Battle Royale mode, that's meant to condense the fighting as the players kill each other. You need to drive them together so that fighting can continue. And so that's what the circle is for. In a game like this, it seems like it's just to drive you towards the boss fight and to give you a time limit for how long you can take to prepare for it. So that you can't just farm the whole map until Nexus, which is a nimble type with fast attacks, and the Recluse, which is a mage. And there are some more character types in addition to those that are not fully revealed, including one that uses a Spirit Ash, so kind of a summoner type hero. Each hero type has a unique skill and an ultimate attack. Wilder can use his hookshot to reel in small enemies or to zip past a stretch of terrain quickly. Guardian can conjure up a mini tornado to knock enemies off their feet, while Recluse can put a marker on an enemy so that every time that enemy is attacked, the damage is siphoned into boosts for her own HP. And then this article talks about combining those abilities to find powerful combinations is a key part of the strategy in Nightreign. And that it was reminiscent of a PC Gamer article where they talked about combining abilities as well. And this IGN article has the same statement where they talk about combining a powerful attack with the Duchess's restage skill that doubles that damage. So that's clearly a pretty powerful combo, if both articles reference it. Yeah, and that kind of cooperation, that's kind of redundant. Cooperative cooperation. Yeah, I would hope so. So that type of cooperation is what kind of makes Nightreign sing, according to this article. And, yeah, let's see, going on, it talks about randomizing the landscape with live volcanoes and forests full of rot in an effort to prevent the landscape from ever growing too predictable, along with random events like meteor strikes, swarms of giant ants to fend off, and the surprise invasion of powerful tormentors, including Margit, the Fell Omen. This article talks about being stalked by Margit across the map, which was pretty terrifying apparently. And if you beat Margit or an invading enemy like that, you get a special reward. So, also, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it in my previous section before I lost the recording or not, but I'm recording, I'm visiting family right now, and I'm recording under a bed comforter in the guest bedroom, and it is hot as hell in here, so I need to, I gotta finish this, otherwise I'm gonna sweat to death under here. But let's see, they also talk about how leveling up your character and stuff is very streamlined. You just spend the runes to level up and you get a pre-made, or you don't choose your stats specifically that you're leveling up, it just levels you up based on your hero class. It talks about the friction-free experience of wall jumping over stuff, the removal of fall damage, and the flying around. You can go to an item that'll send you flying into the air, and then you can glide on a hawk. And so just kind of that freedom and that lack of friction in terms of the maneuverability. It talks about death. It talks about how if you go down, your squad mates can attack you to revive you. And that introduces some really cool strategic elements where, for instance, this guy talks about using his ultimate ability where he dive bombs in and explodes. And he used that to revive both of his downed teammates at once with that ability, so that strategy of when to use your ultimate to harm your enemies versus heal your friends, or maybe even both at once, could be, that it could be pretty cool and sounds very fun. If you die during the day, you can retrieve your runes, but you do lose sessions, you go to the Round Table Hold hub, and you can practice in the training yard, study up on enemy strategies and character lore in the Codex, or spend the currency you earn from each run, known as Merc, to buy character emotes and customizable skins from the merchant. It's in the Round Table Hold that you can also configure each character's relics. These are permanent attribute buffs that are unlocked after each session, and you can slot 3 of them into each character to further tailor them to your playstyle. One relic might boost a character's maximum HP and allow them to deal extra damage with throwing knives, for example, while another might substantially boost attacks from heavy thrusting swords. So, yeah, you get that meta progression of earning new relics and figuring out kind of your unique build with each hero and with what relics you want to equip them with and stuff. The writer talks about the similarities to games like Destiny and Diablo 4, and in response to that, Ishizaki says,
"We don't tend to look at the industry and base our game design or our concerns on what's going on in a more general sense. We feel like if we're making something we're passionate about, and that we want to make, and that we enjoy playing, we trust the users will share in that experience, and hopefully enjoy it too."
And the writer concludes the article by saying that he thinks Nightreign is spectacular, and that Fromsoftware is onto something with it. So that's cool. And then there is a Reddit page, a Reddit post from user WeeWooPeepoo69420. Okay. That just kind of covers some of the stuff from that we know, including from the Japanese article that I couldn't read. So it's all just bullet points. So I'll just kind of go down the list and call out anything of note. So it's on all the platforms, but it's not crossplay. It'll be about $40. No microtransactions or battle passes. All content unlockable from the start. Day-night cycle with boss battles concluding each night. Yada yada, I've talked about all this. Map mechanics takes place in Limveld, a remixed version of Limgrave. Static base layout of the map with randomized elements such as enemy and boss placements, weapon locations, points of interest, and environmental modifiers like swamps or volcanoes. Shrinking playable area marked by acid rain. Initial starting area remains consistent. No enemy respawns. Environmental changes may tie to character stories. That's very interesting to me. I have no idea what that means. I guess maybe each character you can kind of progress their story at your own pace maybe, and if you're playing as them, depending on how far in your story you are, they might add different things to the map. And so that's kind of, that's just an idea. I have no idea what that means for sure, but I'm very interested to see. The playable characters are 8 Yoruwatari, or Nightfarers. Wilder, the all-rounder. Default longsword equipment. The claw shot ability. And the Wedge of Invasion ultimate. And a charged explosive attack. The Guardian character, which is shield focused with improved damage reduction. Their ability is a whirlwind, a ranged AoE interrupt, and their ultimate is Wings of Salvation, a dive bomb attack with team defense buff. The Duchess, magic dagger equipment, elegant sidestep dodge, ability restage, repeats recent damage dealt, and the ultimate is Finale, team invisibility and aggro drop. Recluse, passive FP absorption from enemies. Ability, Magic Cocktail, combines enemy attributes. And the ultimate is Song of the Blood Soul, marks enemies for team healing. That doesn't line up with what the one of the articles we read said. I thought that ability was on the Duchess. Who knows? The Archer character obviously focuses on bow combat. The Barrier character, which is sort of Sekiro based, based on Shadow of the Erdtree's deflecting hard tier mechanic. And then 2 more unannounced characters, including one with a Spirit Ash companion. Combat and progression, increased movement speed, enhanced mobility, weapon system, randomized color-coded loot, rarity tiers. Weapons include passive skills and random stats. Passive buffs remain active while in inventory. Start at level 1 each session, simplified auto-leveling. Multiplayer features. A 3-player co-op focus, no 2-player option, no PvP. Online features, limited communication, map pinging system, gestures only. Cooperative elements, hit downed allies to rescue them, shared rune rewards, and asynchronous features. These are a mainstay of the Souls games. Red corpses with loot from fallen players, visible player phantoms, and such. It talks about the hub, which we know about, Roundtable Hold. You can buy things there. You can buy relics, character skins, gestures, character development, individual character storylines, stories revealed through multiple methods, environmental changes to character progression, evolving gameplay elements. Final release will have a larger pool of random bosses for each day. Boss names differ between menu and I don't know what that means. Known bosses include the Centipede Demon, Gladius, Draconian Tree Sentinel, and Market. Mix of Elden Ring and Dark Souls enemies. Miscellaneous details. Basic level layout includes cliffs, caves, castles. Day 1 boss is always either Centipede Demon or specific demon pairing in the preview build. New game plus elements still under consideration. Yeah, okay. So that's kind of it. So hopefully this video has given you a good sense of what Elden Ring Nightreign is all about. We have so much information about it already, which I think is, as I said, I think is a good thing. It helps people set their expectations properly. In terms of my personal feelings about the game, I would say, it's not what I would have personally crafted or chosen for the next Fromsoft game if I were in charge, but I don't care, really, in a sense. I mean, Fromsoft has earned my trust completely, and whatever they want to do, I have no problem with. I fully support. Until I see evidence that they're starting to screw up or do things bad or whatever, then I'm just gonna let them cook. I'm gonna let them cook because they've done nothing but cook delicious food so far. It is obviously a bit of a departure from a normal Fromsoft game, but I think that's because Ishizaki is in charge, and I think we should also get used to that, because Hidetaka Miyazaki, the game director of all of Fromsoftware's previous games, or maybe not literally all of them, but, of the big ones, he has talked about in the past couple of years, sort of grooming his lieutenants and his trusted workers at the company to be ready for game director roles, and he's preparing them to basically make their own games without Miyazaki's involvement. And this seems to me to be one of the first, or or to be the first foray in that direction. He is giving Ishizaki full latitude to make the game that Ishizaki wants to make. And I think that that's phenomenal. And it's a testament to how great Hidetaka Miyazaki is as a creative and a manager, that he is building a talent pool at Fromsoftware, that he's building a resilient base of creatives. It's not just him doing it all, it's not him at the helm. He's trying to support these other people to make them competent game directors in their own right. So, that being said, as we see these up-and-coming game directors start to make their own games and express their own visions for what they would like to make, I think it means that the Fromsoftware style might become a little bit more eclectic, and we might see Fromsoftware games become a little more diverse as these game directors express their own interests and views. So, overall, I think that's a good thing. I think that that's an exciting thing. But it also means that every game, it might be more or less for you, depending on the particular tastes of the creator. But yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very excited to play Elden Ring Nightreign, and I can't wait for it to come out. But anyway, I'm sweating up a storm under this blanket, so I'm gonna wrap this up and say goodbye and say thank you for joining me to listen to me yap about Elden Ring Nightreign. The thing that far and away I was most excited for from the Game Awards. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. I was thinking of making a video about the Game Awards, but once Nightreign came out and we got all this information, I knew that I just had to focus on this and talk about it only. But obviously there was some other stuff like The Witcher 4